All right, folks, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's College Sports Communicators live webinar. We're pleased to offer this session on crafting dynamic and on-brand content by leveraging the power of Adobe Express. Thank you all for joining this important discussion as we discuss how to go about using the tools within Adobe to assist with your creativity and your productivity. My name is Patrick Murphy. I'm the Athletic Communications Coordinator at Colorado School of Mines. I'm also the chair of the CSC Creative and Digital Design Contest, also a member of the Young Professionals Committee, and I will be serving as the moderator for today's webinar. We are absolutely pleased to welcome back our presenters, Donna Caldwell and Eric Rowse, who joined us in Las Vegas this summer at CSC Unite 24 for multiple sessions, for those of you who are there. If not, we're excited to have them back here, and they are here to offer their thoughts and expertise and take your questions. Speaking of questions, we can take those at any time. Just place them in the Q&A function of this Zoom. You can use the chat function to comment, but please make sure to use the Q&A channel only for your questions. A reminder to everyone watching, we are recording this webinar, and later on the CSC website and YouTube page, you can watch it as an on-demand session, and this will also be available on numerous podcast channels. Make sure you invite your fellow current CSC colleagues to watch and listen to this program either live or after when it's recorded and archived. We appreciate you all taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. We've got lots to cover, so let's get started. Introducing our panelists, joining us first, Eric Rowse. Eric, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Sun's out in Boston today. Good day.
And also joining us, Donna Caldwell. Donna, how are you today?
Great, thank you.
All right. Again, we're going to be talking about using the power of Adobe Express for projects for all the creatives and communicators in our industry. So we'll jump right into it. Donna, how about you lead us off? We'll open up talking about one of the nice new tools in Adobe Express, lockable template fields.
All right. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure my sound is on, and there we go. Everyone should see actually the click here on the home page. For anyone who's not as familiar with Express, I'm going to take just a minute to quickly point out some sections in that home page. So when you open up Express, you're going to see different tools down the left side, and then you're also going to see Adobe's best effort to try to get you to that type of project that you want to do right away. Do I want to enhance a photo, create a video, create a document, a social post? At any point, I can search for any type of element that I'm trying to create or I'm trying to navigate to. And I can also go into the search field to look for file names or search amongst the tens of thousands of templates that we have available, which is also listed over here on the left. Anything that you create in Express is automatically going to be placed in your stuff folder. Within that folder, I'm going to have the ability to create multiple folders. I can also access those projects, libraries, and favorites that I have labeled or I have been added to. I want to talk just a second because when we're talking about lockable templates, what we're trying to do is enforce our brand guidelines for our institution. So how do I know what those brand guidelines are? Someone has set that brand up inside of Express, or they can also go directly to a Creative Cloud library, and they can either convert that to an Express brand or access its functionality right inside of Express. So these are all brands and libraries that I am a member of. If I go to brands, I'm going to see that some of those are exactly the same thing, but these are specifically for Express. As I move down the page, a couple other things I want to bring to your attention. I can't hide this at the moment, but this is basically a preview of what Adobe is beta testing with employees in order to get your brand front and center. Right now, a user has to go into their brand to see that, and we've gotten a lot of customers asking, how can we push that front and center so they know exactly what their brand is and they can jump right into those templates that are available specifically for our institution. The other section I want to call to your attention is what we call quick actions. These are important because they are single editing functions that you most often potentially might need to do. Resize an image, generate a QR code. How about removing the background of a photo or a video? You can do these within 1 or 2 clicks, and we just want to make sure that you know that these are right at your fingertips without having to go into an additional application in order to do that. All right, there's an entire section we have here on available Gen AI functionality, whether it's generating an image from text, removing an object, adding an object, or even creating a custom template from the templates that are part of Express. I'm not going to go into much more than that. You can see if you look down here, we have a social media scheduler. One element I want to bring your attention to is our Learn feature. When you click on this, you're presented with all kinds of videos. So just about anything that Eric and I talk about today, if you go into that Learn little light bulb there, you're going to probably see a little video giving you some explanation. Notice these are very short. Adobe knows that people don't have 8 hours to focus on how to complete a single feature, but these are going to give you that background and more instructions that you might need. Add-ons are just one last thing I want to bring up, and that's because we have extended the functionality of Express to other applications that you might need or have access to. So for instance, this could be a storage repository. It could be some sort of a video augmentation third-party software. And when you go in there, although your IT department is going to control what you have access to, we have a lot of add-ons you can search through. At any point, if I just want to go directly to some sort of a project that I want to create, I always have this plus button in the top left corner. One of the things I want to bring to your attention is way down here at the bottom. It says import from other apps. You probably already know that you can bring in source applications from a few of our Creative Cloud applications. So if I click on that, I can browse to try to find that specific file. But if I look at the import from other apps, you can see right now you can import a PDF, a Illustrator file, Photoshop file. Coming soon is InDesign. You can also open up a Canva project and bring it in and have Express do its best job to try to convert that. And then here are a few of the storage repositories that you might have access to. Maybe your group actually stores approved photos, player cards, whatever it might be, in that repository. All right, I'm going to go jump in now, and we're going to talk about lock templates. And I'm going to mix this up with a few other features that we have. I want to just bring up this source file. Now, this started out as a template, and I know I've gotten a lot of feedback from people indicating that, well, we have our own templates. We need to have our own brand. You might check out the tens of thousands of templates that Express has available to you at no additional cost, because they're great for ideation. You may think of something that you hadn't really thought of, presenting elements together, or you may find something in a particular sport that you think really draws people's attention to it. You can always align that with your brand. And we can do that now with a one-click, I call it brandify. I don't think that's a real English word, but I use it all the time. But here is one of those templates that I augmented a bit. This is for the women's basketball season in order to keep pushing out where the stats are for that. So if I click on this, I'm going to see that I have the players jump in. Here are the different teams that are playing, who's winning those sub-finals all the way to the finals, and then the winner. That is completely done inside of Express. So I want to go into these a little bit to just show you how this was put together. We have a couple of different images of women basketball players. If I look down here, I can see that a grayscale effect was applied to them. I also, just to add some texture, you'll notice that there are these textures that were added here at the top, there at the bottom. There's a background color, and then there are all of the backgrounds for each of the team text insertions. So how did that all end up becoming a video? If I click on any one of these, you can see I can resize, I can add different effects, but I can also add animation. So in this case, if I look down at animation, I see there are 3 settings. I can have something come on to the scene, something continually loop in that scene, and something get pushed out. So it disappears from what the user is, the end user is seeing. So in this case, I can see I have a purple dot with in and in loop. So if I look at the in, I can see that we have slide selected, but there are all kinds of other movements that I can do. Now, that same thing is true for the basketball player here on the right. Again, grayscale. I can see that it's slide, but what is the loop for both of these? It's called jitter. So it's just giving the impression of activity. And when I decide how I want those to come onto the scene, that's when I'm going to want to edit my timeline. By clicking on the edit timeline, I get an expanded view of what's happening in the scene. How are these different elements coming onto the scene? So I just click on any one of these for animation. The first two things that happen is I notice right from the very beginning, women's basketball, and both of these women come onto the scene. But the other elements have not come onto the scene yet. In this particular case, the next one is for the division championship title to come across. I see another purple dot. I can see that this is where the first level of teams come in, first winning rounds, and then the final rounds, and eventually the winner. How I manipulate that is just by changing the beginning of the particular elements. Its presence will show up across the entire scene, but if I move that beginning double bar, it's going to come on later in that animation. Anything that I animate, I have now turned this static template into a video. I can also add audio. I can add, take advantage of one of the new 15,000 sound effects that have just landed. And how do I do that? I just go into my media and I can choose from photos, videos, audio. I'm interested in the audio right now. And these would all be kind of background ones that I might want to use, but I also may want sound effects. And if I click on any of these sections, you're going to see this little purple view all in the upper right-hand corner. I could go ahead and say, do I have a basketball? And it's pretty amazing that I have dozens and dozens of basketball sound effects. Maybe I want to have the sound of the basketball hitting the rim. And then in addition to that, maybe as this is going through, I may go ahead and add that. But at the same time, oh, and by the way, this is really exciting. As of last Friday, I think, we now have the ability to fade in and fade out audio. This was a huge ask from our customers. We do have transitions between video scenes. We have some really nice fades, but we didn't have the ability to fade out audio. And anyway, we are really excited to see that that is now part of this. I'm going to go in one more time, and I'm going to get rid of the basketball effects. And let's just do a search for, let's get rid of this. And I'm looking for maybe some fun music that would be great. Right? I can go ahead and add that as well. So now I can have the basketball sound effect going on. I can completely overload my users with sound, but you now have the ability to add more than one sound or audio track, which again, just came on the field last week or the week before. So again, we're really excited about that. Now, at this point, I really would like this to be, I'm going to go ahead and delete these for the moment. Or actually, I'm just going to go into another version of this. I want to talk about how am I going to go in and make sure that this is locked for a template. All right, so let's go into this version here. Same exact file, but you'll notice that some of these are already locked. My suggestion as a best practice is if you have something that has a lot of elements to this, which this has a lot of different text boxes, and you want to lock a majority of it, or you want to lock it with permission to substitute maybe the text or a image, what I'd like to do first is just select everything just to make this much faster. And I'm going to indicate that I want everything locked. Now what I can do is go back and indicate where am I going to make those exceptions. So I click lock. You'll see these little locks appear all over. You'll also see these locks going up and down the right-hand side, which for lack of a better term is a little bit of a layer structure, which I can compress at any time or I can expand. Now I do want to give some thought to would I want someone to change women's basketball season? Maybe not, because if this is going to be football or baseball or swimming, I'm going to want to change a lot of the imagery. There are other things I'm going to want to do. So I may go ahead and leave that as something that I cannot change. But maybe the Division 2, somebody has to change that to a Division 3 or Division 1. I'm going to make an exception to this. It is locked, but an individual can replace the text. This is also going to be true for, obviously, for all of the team insertions, the winners, as the season goes on, and I update this and push this out to social media or out on a screen on campus. I'm also going to give the user the ability to change that text. Couple of best practices on this. Remember, if you're making a template, you have to take into consideration the ability to put the longest team name in one of these background yellow swatches. So what I would do ahead of time is just think ahead. What's going to be that, this is going to be true about the next player card that I show you. Really think about what are the possibilities of the content that might end up in this. All right, I'm ready to make this a template. So I'm going to go to the purple share button in the upper right-hand corner. There are lots of things that happen in this share button. I sometimes wish it was maybe separate buttons, but you can see I can invite people to collaborate. We have live collaboration inside of Express. So a colleague of yours can work on this at the same time with you. But what I'm interested here is make a template. There are two areas you're going to want to, actually three, you're going to want to go through and fill in. One, you want to give that template a name that means something to your users. Two, you want to add this to a brand. So in this case, I have a brand called Workflow Results. I just use it to put some of my templates in. You can also place a note. I might say replace team place holder text with participating teams. Okay. I'm going to save that note. Also, how tight am I going to restrict this? Am I going to allow users to substitute, when they have the ability to substitute an image or text, am I going to allow them to go out to the Adobe Media? Or do these have to be compliant images that you are pulling from your own storage repository? Are they allowed to add any new layers into the template? Or am I going to block that? I'm going to leave these open just for now, but the one of the three down here that have to be chosen, users can unlock layers if needed. Users need basically a password, or no users can unlock layers. I'm going to go ahead and choose that one and click Save Restrictions. All right. When I click on those restrictions, it's going to go ahead and send that out. I'm going to back up just for time's sake. I'm going to take you to that element. And let's go into my brands. And
While Donna's going ahead and pulling that up, if anybody has any questions so far, make sure you put those in the Q&A tab. We'll try to get to those as they come in and in order and as time allows. Also want to thank Donna for going and giving a quick introduction to what Adobe Express is for those that may not be familiar with it and some of the features that it has that are also new and existing. I know one thing that a lot of us run into when we're trying to come up with content for social media is running into, you know, do we want to use music and risk being, hit with a copyright strike or not? Being able to use that stock music out of Adobe is a very useful asset, and also being able to add sound effects as well.
that's a really good point, Patrick. I know this is something that everyone struggles with, is what are we going to use for music that's exciting, that's fun, but that we're not going to either get it automatically pulled off of YouTube through the compliant bot, or whether we just don't want to put ourselves in a position of using copyrighted content. All right. So I have clicked on the template that I saved, and you'll notice that I can copy the link so I could distribute it that way, or I can just go ahead and start a new file. Think about a template as something that always remains there, always remains the same. When a user wants to access it, they are essentially making a copy of that template file, making it their own. And when they start that new file, any changes they make go into a copy of this that gets placed in their stuff, your stuff folder. And this has a lot of content in it. All right. So I want to make sure that I can see everything. This is something to be alert to. Right now, where is all that content that I just created? And it's because as part of that video, it is way over here. So if you notice that there's a video, drag out the slider on the timeline just to make sure that you see everything. All right, I'm going to go into this team fields, and you'll see that the replaceable text is listed on the left. What can I change? Well, I'm looking for team 1. Here's another thing to be aware of, just as a best practice. When this template was first made, it was team, right? And it was win. I've got, what, 8 different teams. So I want to make sure that I'm filling out the one that makes the most sense. So if I just click on team 1, I can go ahead and put in, let's see, Gannon. And they're going to end up playing team 2. So I'm going to look for team 2. And I'm going to say this is Lock Haven. All right. And I could go through and place all of those first teams. Maybe that's our very first social media post. But then when the winning starts happening and the competition starts getting closer to the finals, I can go ahead and fill out the next row and the next row. Okay, Patrick, any questions on that particular portion so far?
Don't see anything that's come in yet, but again, for everybody watching along, make sure you go ahead and get those questions into the Q&A. Eric, I'd like to have you jump in on this as well before we move on. Is there anything else that you would like to add, talking about lockable template fields and anything else?
I do want to, Eric, you are going to talk about removing background, right?
I will be, yes. But
yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you. I want to make sure you have plenty of time for this because I'm just trying to keep a close track of the clock. All right. Get out of sharing.
Oh, great. Well, before I get going, one thing I want to point out, we were talking about music earlier. It's okay to use music that you own, that you composed, or that you have the rights to. So if your school fight song is owned by you, by all means, put it in. But if somebody did a DJ remix of it, yeah, you don't own that right. So if you own the music or you have original compositions, that's great. Go ahead and include it. The other thing I want to talk about templates is it might have been kind of subtly added, but video was a template. Don't let that slide by. Lots of things can be templates. Long format HTML can be used from a template now in Express. Video can be used as a template now from Express. Static social media content can be used as an Express. So standardizing, applying brand guidelines, very powerful. So don't be afraid to try turning something into a template, because once the template, you can lock it to the brand, share it with your colleagues, and then continuity and consistency will be present. Because why? Nobody wants the brand police chewing on their backside. Lock it down with the template. It's very effective and very helpful. Now I'm going to take that same approach, but the logic I'm going to use is I'm going to be looking at a player poster, because that might be something you need to be making. Seasons are just starting, and I have on screen right now a potential for a men's soccer player poster here at Altura University. I've got the player, I've got their name, number, and their position, along with a bunch of other assets. So where to get these assets? Well, this could have come from a template. That logo came from a brand. This smoke color could have come from a brand as an approved asset. This chevron could have come from approved brand colors. The only variable stuff is the sport type, player's number, position, and their name. It's these 4 elements plus the image of the athlete. That's the stuff I know that's going to take a lot of effort to make, because old school in Photoshop, right? I'd have to open up a layered PSD file and scroll through all these images and click the image one at a time, and then export it out as a PNG or PDF or some JPEG or some other kind of file format. And ultimately, I would end up with a very large pile of assets. just to give you the actual look and feel of this. When I have sat in your chairs, I have shared your pain. I now end up with a bunch of this. I have to put every one of these players into a poster with a name, position, and maybe how long I've been on a team. Maybe it's some initial stats. I just kept it very simple. But I have both men's and women's available to me, as you might end up needing to have made. Previously, for each person, that would be a separate standalone poster element, introducing them and their position on the team. That's the pits. I don't have to do that by hand anymore. We don't have to do that by hand anymore. What I can do is I can come into Express and I can start to use the power of automation to ensure that this element, I'm going to mark that as variable. This is going to be a variable. This is going to be a variable. This is going to be a variable. Even the player itself is going to be a variable. That's going to be fed from a CSV, Excel file, basically. And there's an add-on that is present inside Express, that allows me to designate variable areas, designate the picture, even tell that picture, you know what, I want you to programmatically knock out the background so I don't have to do it by hand per image. What I'm going to end up is this, and maybe 49 other variants of this by one clicking a button and just a little bit of pre-thought about, if I'm going to be shooting something that's going to end up as a template, I at least have to make sure that all the players' arms and limbs are fitting nicely inside the region of space that I've allocated for them to be present on. You can see him just kind of getting to the sides of this particular gentleman. Might have some limbs that are peeking out, and I'll show you a nice, interesting fix to correct that. But let's turn this back into raw layout. I'm now going to go to my add-ons, bottom left corner of the page. The one that I want to use, if I have not had any present in my environment, is bulk. Bulk, create, and generate. I'm going to click that. What will this do for me? Well, these are the instructions over here on the right-hand side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say get started. And I'm given this rough menu. Rough is, I'm not going to say crude either. We're actually trying to integrate this natively into the application as opposed to a plugin style add-on. Either way, I start with the rules. Well, what's the first thing I want to change? Well, I want to make sure that the player is changed. So I want to replace the foreground image. I have designated that through using this add-on, the region of space that is being occupied by that player will now be driven by a CSV file telling me on row 2, add this person, on row 3, add this person, and so on. Building on this, let's make this piece of text variable by saying, I want to make this a sport. Maybe I have to do men's soccer and women's soccer. Why do I want to do that by hand? I can do that as a variable element. What is this element going to be? This is going to be number. Now, why did it shoot off to the side? Because I didn't format the text to be a line left. So now when I actually come back to this, I can even just scooch this out to the side to say with a line left, the number is going to drop right over this curly bracket. And that's what that curly bracket means. Variable data, as in extract information from a spreadsheet. Defense. I want this to also be added because that's going to be position. What position do they play on the team? And concluding with this fourth one, add, that's going to be last name. Okay, and I click back on the player to make sure that they're marked as a foreground image. I have now designated 5 elements on this poster that I want to be variable. I now choose the final step, download the custom template. What will this do for me? Express is going to make me a CSV file. It's going to be putting column headings that utilize the names found in the curly brackets. Then I feed that spreadsheet information. So I'm going to download this CSV file. Okay. I'm now going to say, where is it in my hard drive? And I'm going to open this with Express. I'm just opening it off screen. And here it is. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can all see it. There we go. Notice what it did for me. I now have columns in which I can add position, sports, jersey numbers, positions, and the player's last name. So I'm not doing this typing it by hand by saying file new, copy, 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 type, 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 type. I make one file, designate variable data elements, feed the CSV file, then I upload the CSV file and I hit create, all on one button. It also gives me a column that says, well, what is the name of the file? Well, naturally, because I know if I have the player's name on a file, like I was showing you before inside Photoshop, I've got bunches of these files. I need to make sure that that is equally found as well, too. So that also means that I have to include all the names of these files. So here's what I've done ahead of time. I've already made another spreadsheet in which I've separated this out. I'm just going to copy from my spreadsheet that I knew I'm going to need to get the names of these files. What I do, I did this by hand. So I'm just going to copy all of this ahead of time. Here's a copy, and I'm going to come into my spreadsheet, and then I'm going to drop in the name. All these players play men's soccer. Great. So I'm going to take this frame, this variable field, and bring that down. So now men's soccer will automatically appear. What position number? Well, I'm going to go back to my source document that I made by hand. I'm going to copy in all these numbers. There we go. I just got to get down a little bit to Ariel Macano. Copy. Come in my original spreadsheet and paste all that in. And now I have their positions. Defense to defense. Copy. I know what this is seeming like is, wait a minute, what's the Express part of this? The Express part of this is setting up the environment so we don't have to do all this by hand in the application. And then I just need to conclude with, what is their last name? Bring all this down. Copy and paste. And
So
drop that
Eric,
in.
it seems
Go
like
right ahead.
the most time intensive part of this is just getting this spreadsheet set up. But once that spreadsheet is set up, you just bring it back into Express, hit generate, and then it'll automatically create all however many number of files you're looking to create.
Got it in one. That's exactly right. What we're doing is, that's what I mean by a little proper previous planning prevents pitifully poor performance. If you're in the Navy, you'll know a different version of that. But it just takes a little bit of skull work ahead of time to ensure that all the right things are present, and you just do it once. And if you do it once, you don't have to repeat. And I can just change the spreadsheet as opposed to creating a new source file every single time.
And would you be able to edit this spreadsheet, like add fields into the spreadsheet and also be able to add fields into Express? So say if you wanted to use a similar template, but you still have this base information for like a player of the week graphic or something else that's not just a player poster.
Exactly right. Yes. Now, what Express can get a little sketchy about is trying to by hand add a new column with the new variable data field. So you're better off going to the source document in which we had created those variable fields and adding it there. Then all you have to do is just match the name up at the top here. You'll be okay. All right, so I know that probably felt like, well, that was a lot unexciting. That's a lot of Excel work. But remember, I have to have something to feed the entity. So now I'm going to save this to, and the saving part is one of the more important places as well, too. I need to save this as a comma delimited CSV, sorry, comma separated value, CSV. But where does it live? This needs to live in the environment where I'm keeping all of the images. Because if you don't do that, think about like a hyperlink. You have to give it a name / name / name / name. That's why in my spreadsheet, you can see all my image names don't have a name of a folder. / name of a folder / I'm going to insert this spreadsheet into the exact same location where all of my assets are created or living. That way it makes it easier for the spreadsheet and Express to talk to each other in order to populate this properly. Now, let's make the magic happen. I'm going to go back into Express. I'm now ready to hit the next button. And next is upload the CSV. Browse, I'm going to go get it. It is actually in my combined. Now, the reason why I combined these two images together, because I was using men's and women's. I also put in the M for men and the W for women, because in an alpha list, it will have mixed up the teammates. So I just wanted to keep it separate, M for men's, W for women's, so I can make it easier for me to see. I get it open. It's happy. And now I'm going to say, upload my images. I can also say, hey, do you want to put in a prompt? Now, that was one of the elements that wasn't briefly talked about. Column C. If I wanted to, I could type out a prompt to make a generated, AI-generated background. Now, usually, for continuity's sake, everybody on all sporting teams has the same background. So this can be fun to mess around with. Each player wanted their own different background that they would appear in front of. I left it out because we're trying to make something look standardized. But that's why I was asking me back in Express, hey, you know what? You're able to do this. You just didn't do it. That's why I chose them with the red X. And now all I do is I find all the images. Go to Browse, click one, and then click the rest of these, and open. Here's the last part. Remove the background. So I've now loaded 50 images into one template being fed by a spreadsheet that'll automatically generate player posters for me. And boom, I'm off and running. What's happening is I'm not making 50 separate standalone assets. I'm making one Express document with 50 pages. So what I don't have to do is have a folder that will occupy lots of my hard drive space. I'm just going to have one Express file that will contain all of the pages of all the athletes. Now, right now we're at 82%. When I'm done, I will click on this page icon and I'll see all my players. And I'll be ready to go, ready for me to select one or many, and then choose download to punch them out as JPEGs or PNGs, ready to then be put into your social media environments, or as Patrick was saying, maybe it's a pre-made player of the week file. Because remember, templates, as we were describing earlier, templates can really be still image, can be video, can be long format HTML, and the template doesn't have to be a simple poster. What are the types of things that you know that you're making frequently? Or making frequent updates to? Prime candidate to try out bulk replace, see if it would be of interest or ability for you to use in your workflow.
It's certainly a lot easier than going into one PSD file and then having to cut out, one player by hand, or using the automatic, background removal in Photoshop, and then just
Yep.
having layers on layers on layers on layers, and
There they are. That's old school.
and creating a comically oversized PSD file that, if you make it too big, it'll automatically convert itself to a PSB file. And it just, the bigger the file gets, the slower it is to work with and edit. So this tool in Express, definitely, it might take a little bit of legwork on the front end to get set up, but once you have it set up, it seems that's definitely a better way to utilize your time and be able to still create on brand graphics within a reasonable amount of time.
Right. Right now we're at the mercy of bandwidth. So maybe this is a kick it off, go get a coffee, come back, and you just made 50 assets. It's just about done. Now, even if I click on the page, see what it did? Here's all the hard work you don't have to do anymore. It's all waiting right here, ready to be downloaded as individual assets. As more elements come in, I'm at 37. I know I have more players coming. It just hasn't finished the work yet. Then I would just click download, and I'd say, well, which ones am I interested in downloading? Am I downloading all the pages, or do I go in by hand and click the ones I'm interested in? And I can X out of that, and it looks like it has completed its task. Or I might have interrupted it by hitting download. Either way, hopefully the logic is making sense now. I have all my players in place. I can just double click on any one of them. And ooh, elbows. When we're talking about setting up content for a templatized, again, this is one of the things you just have to be aware of. Make sure, like Donna was saying, you want to choose the largest piece of text that will occupy button space, meaning all your buttons will now be the length of the longest team name. Now, what I had done is when I had made my graphics, I didn't accommodate flippy elbows. Now, there's a few ways we can handle this. One way inside Photoshop would be to, and here's an example right here. This is an actual piece of art taken by somebody at Ohio State, not making fun of them, just telling the tale. The SID was like, well, okay, that's a great image, but I need her shoulders. I need the rest of her torso. I need her elbow. She was spending 2.5 hours using classic Photoshop techniques to graft on the shoulders of another human onto her and graft on the elbow of another human onto her to give her a more full and complete torso. Or here's all you do. I open up this asset, go to my crop tool, and I expand the region of space, anticipating the rest of her body to occupy. So that's enough space to get that shoulder. That's enough space to get that shoulder. And this might be enough space to get torso and the rest of the elbow. I'm going to click one button and click generate. AI Firefly, which is hardwired into Photoshop, is going to look at this torso. You're going to say, okay, I know what it needs. She needs shoulders, an elbow, and a waistline. And I can pick variations on this theme. They're probably saying, well, it mangled the shirt. Yeah, of course it did. Because remember, Firefly was trained on Adobe stock. Adobe stock has no concept of copyrighted or trademarked assets or materials. So it'd be classic Photoshop techniques just to eliminate that particular element that Firefly had put in there, trying to say, oh, let me be helpful and add more typography. But what I just did was really stretch, 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 one click of button. I can now use that to look at some of these other players to say, well, okay, if I didn't establish my frames properly through my template utilization, I can do the same thing that I just did and stretch out the column. Just click generate. But I probably do it one at a time because not every person inside this template creator got treated with the chopped elbow effect. You can see Musiala didn't, Paulinia didn't, Tel, Ulrich. So it might be a spot check. Now, equally, these are international players. International players certainly use some unique characters that your spreadsheet would not understand. So if I need to find another person, like the double dots that you put over a U, okay, so let's say in this case, Musiala, I needed to ensure that that is not the right U in German. I highlight the U, I hold down the U key, and I hit number 4. Now I've got the right type special character in place. So I didn't do that inside Express. I did that knowing that, beg your pardon, inside Excel. Because Excel would probably have a fit if I tried to use international characters. So I just spot changed it after it was made inside Express. So now I can again look through this list and hit the download button, punch out all the pages as JPEGs, and okay, there's that team done. What's next? Men's, women's swimming, women's volleyball, men's, women's basketball, men's baseball, women's softball, and so on. All you really need are the players, which you already have. I had to go to the Bayern Munich site, you cut all these players out by hand just so I could have a fictional team. So my apologies to anybody that's repping Bayern Munich on this call. Love your team, I support you, but I didn't have anywhere to go to get some sample humans. So that's where I got all my players for this particular example. But you won't have that problem. This is already made for you. All these players are ready to go. It's more about where do you get them in an environment to make it more efficient for me to turn them into something through automation using the Express auto template generator through bulk create.
We do have a
Oh,
question that's come in that's been
please.
texted in. Would like to go ahead and direct this to Donna since she touched on it in her kind of intro overview to Express. Someone asked, I have a free Adobe Express account and we are going to upgrade and pay for the paid version of Adobe Express Premium. So if we purchase the premium plan, can they invite someone with a free plan to collaborate on a file? Everyone in their department will not have a premium account. So can someone with a free account collaborate on something shared with them from a premium account?
That's a really good question. I believe collaboration is a premium feature, but if anybody wants to do a comparison of those, I'm just going to go over really quickly. We have a Adobe Express feature comparison.
You can
And
share a screen on this if you'd like, Donna.
pardon?
You can share a screen on this if you'd like, Donna.
Yeah, let me do that real quick. And let's take a quick look at that. All right. So we have premium versus free. I find this really helpful, especially when I'm looking at generative credits. I want to know how many fonts I have access to, because that would be another thing as well. Looking for, let me just go to all of these. We get into a much more granular detail, but there is a section here on collaboration.
Look
Commenting.
like free.
Yep.
It's viable. Free can share with
Yep.
premium
Mhm.
for commenting and co-editing. What I didn't do is hit the invite button. So it's just like a Google Doc, many hands in one file actively at the same time. So if I or Donna has a file with 12 pages, I could be in page 1, Donna could be in page 7, a offsite collaborator could be in page 3, and we all be harmoniously cranking away in the same file at the same time.
Our team does this quite often. Eric and I have lots of projects where we share editing. Now, notice when you put in someone's email, right? You have the ability to say this individual can have full editing rights or they can only comment. And obviously, when we are working on projects together, I always give full editing rights. Eric the same, and then we go ahead and click invite to edit. That person will get an email as well as a notification that's going to pop up here in the top so that they can go ahead and accept that invitation and begin editing. Hopefully that answers that question.
That was a fantastic question. Thank you to whoever submitted that. Again, folks, we do still have some time left, so make sure you put any questions that you've come up with so far in this webinar in the Q&A. We'll try to get to those as time allows. Moving ahead, to our final topic. I know Eric just kind of touched on it briefly in Photoshop, the generative AI there. What does generative AI look like in Adobe Express, and how can folks use that to help expedite their workflows?
Sure. Well, I found that generative AI and Express can give you a way of not worrying about, well, I don't quite have the chops to do a perfect alignment and creation of an idea, but I'm going to need a bit of assistance in order to put together maybe some kind of template, or maybe not even a template. Maybe it's a layout. One of the things that I'm a big fan of generative AI is being able to generate images. Sure, we've been doing that for the past year, and of course, I can hover over any one of those things and see what text that it took in order to create the image below. But I like generating templates, because now what I can do is I can put in a string of content and then have that do the actual layout for me, the typography setting, the creation of imagery that is generated by AI prompts, all without me having to kind of worry about, well, what's the best way to actually kind of lay this out? And kind of as a sort of a me to you thing, when you start working with AI, I have a text file. And in this text file, I just throw in all of my successful prompts that I use that help me generate good images. Right now, I'm up to about 13. I need to keep creating more cool stuff, but I recommend when you start playing around with AI, keep your prompts in a separate place, because here's an example right here. I was able to create a pattern of volleyballs on a volleyball court using brand specific colors for that particular university I was giving a demonstration for. That kind of syntax is a little bit hard to find. So that's when you start messing around with text and imagery and the art and the science versus prompt writing. It can be very beneficial to have something to go back to the well to try to get a successful outcome. In this case, I want to just show a quick thing, college gaming club meeting. Just because it's pre-written, that's what I'm going to put in. This is generating a template. So it's going to generate 8.5 by 11 image with typography, with color, with layout, with AI generated images for me. But remember, because it's a template, I can always create a new piece of content from that and completely alter and edit it. You all probably have lots of templates at your disposal. Maybe you're trying to cook up something new. You need an idea, you need an ideation. So maybe this is your ideation in this case for campus gaming in the library. What I can do is I can click on that. And now while it's loading up, I can then, once it's on screen, further adapt it with what? Brand compliance. Because I can click on this particular element or this element and say, all right, well, there's a font, but that's not the right font. That's not my brand font. How do I change a font to be on brand? I click on that pull down. I go to my drop down, and then I can look at Altura University brands. They're the fonts that I'm sanctioned to use. So just like that, it did the hard part for me. It did the layout. It did the progression of imagery, but now I get to come in and ensure that it's on point, because that color isn't the right color, because that's not using the right brand. I want it to be my Altura brand. And that's the color I want, or maybe it's this color. And this background doesn't have to be gray either. Maybe that can be red. So maybe this type becomes white, and so on. So again, just like that, with some very simple tweaks, I used AI to put together a rough idea that I can show around the office and say, hey, is this hitting everybody right? Do you like it? Do you not like it? That all came out of just me using AI to say, I want to have it take some of the drudgery out of my existence.
Another question that's come in through the Q&A before we come up on time: is it possible to import our own PSD templates into Adobe Express? And if so, can we get a walk through the process? I know we kind of touched on that briefly earlier. You can actually import a variety of file types into Express, and not just from Adobe platforms. But if we could just get a quick walk through that one more time for those of us who may have joined late.
Yeah. Let's go to that particular plus sign. All right, I'm going to go back out here. I can get there a couple different ways, but if I just want to, I know exactly where that Photoshop file is. When we say Photoshop templates, we can open Photoshop files. From that point, you can turn that into an Express template. You can lock fields, do everything else to prepare that, or even prepare that for the bulk create that Eric just showed. So if I want to go to start from your content, I can go ahead and click here, and I can navigate through my desktop, through my storage that I have connected to my desktop, and I can open that file up. I can also, as we mentioned earlier, I can go from the plus sign to import from other apps, and I can browse that way as well. So it's just really going in and identifying in your storage that Photoshop file you want to open. It should recognize the layers so that you can go ahead and assign whether something needs to be locked or whether you have the ability to change it. Obviously, Express is not Photoshop, so you're going to have limitations on what edits you can make, but it's really nice to be able to reuse those Photoshop and Illustrator files in order to just not have to start things from scratch again. Eric, anything you want to add to that?
Right, you made a good point. Complex masking or other types of things that are inherent to layer complexities in a Photoshop file will most likely end up getting flattened because Express can only handle a certain amount of things. Express can do masking, like I bring a picture up on screen and then I can have it be masked through a circle or a rhomboid or a star. But if you're starting to get more specific about how you're doing a creative mask in your PSD template, might not make the trip into Express. But again, don't let that dissuade you. The hard part is getting it into Express so you can start to build upon it and you can successfully do that.
Here's oh, sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
No.
I was just going to say, this is an Illustrator file that I just opened up inside. Actually, I think it might have even been an InDesign that I saved as a PDF, and it recognized each of the text blocks. It's recognizing as much of those elements that it can, but it really, I can imagine if I had to do this from scratch inside of Express.
What's the layer stack look like?
Let's take a look here. So
Oh,
I've got,
grouped. Okay.
Yep. Which is nice because there's so many, in this case, there were so many vector elements that came from the Illustrator file. So you can see there's 29.
That was an excellent question. Appreciate those watching for asking. But we're coming up on time, and want to give a big thank you to Eric and Donna for spending a little bit of their day with us to discuss some of the ins and outs of Adobe Express. For those of you who may not be so familiar with it, or those who are familiar with it who may not be as up to date with some of the new features that have been coming out in recent weeks and years. Folks, again, a reminder, this webinar will be on demand later today, so make sure you share that information with your colleagues. If you want to go back and watch anything, feel free to do so at your leisure. We encourage you to check the CSC website, collegesportscommunicators.com, for updated information on what's coming up next as far as CSC programming and continuing education throughout the year. Thank you all for, again, taking a little bit of your time out of your day to spend it with us. We appreciate it. Hope everybody's fall is going well, and we wish you all the best of luck later and look forward to seeing you again on a later CSC webinar.